Right, and so this is another British Skating Legends interview, and today some of you will recognise. I'm sure some of you won't, but many of you will recognise that I'm with Errol Spence.
Hi, John.
You right, mate? And so anyway, before we get onto the skating stuff, when and where were you born, Errol?
Yeah, I was born in Northampton way back in 1969. Yeah, so I lived in Spence for a stay. But yeah, Northampton born and bred basically.
Okay.
Although I did sort of move up and down, but yeah, basically educated in Northampton. So yeah, Northampton was my home.
So yeah. So just so we're in Northampton now. So we're both living in, although we both live in Northampton, we don't see each other that often. But how did you get into roller skating, and more specifically speed skating?
Yeah, roller skating was. There used to be a rink called Roller City in the town, and an old speed skater called John Mullane used to own it.
Know well.
Yeah, so obviously you go down there and you're learning to skate, and then you'd always see the speed skaters come on at the end and they'll do their thing, and that's what it just amazed me what they did and all the rest of it. But I was a bit younger then, and so I never ever got to skate with them. The rink closed. I carried on sort of messing about in school playgrounds, and the rink opened again without a speed skating team. But I always wanted to become a speed skater, and I remember sort of making a few inquiries and had a speed skating team in Milton Keynes. So I went and joined them, and that's how it sort of all transpired. So yeah, I was, like I say, it was the roller rink in Northampton which really sort of opened my eyes
to the roller skate.
Yeah.
So how did you get to? Because yes, right, because you did skate for Milton Keynes.
That's right. Yeah.
So how did you get with the Milton Keynes lot?
Yeah. So literally, I just from memory, I think what it was just. I thought, right, I'd like to be able to do it. I think I phoned NSA, National Skate Association.
Yeah.
And they gave me the number for Brian Hartley.
Yeah.
And I think he was in charge of Milton Keynes at the time.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him on the phone. He said, yeah, we trained at the Agora. I think it was a Tuesday or a Thursday. And I wasn't driving it, but it was only a train ride, and I sort of bought the train ticket and went over there. To Wolverton, exactly, yeah. And they were my first taste of sort of learning the ropes, and yeah, so I sort of got into it really. So
you used to train with the Hartleys at the Agora?
Yeah, I did, yeah. That was sort of the first proper training session. They sort of introduced me to, you know, what speed skating was and such. That's how I first got into it. That was my first taste. Yeah, surprising.
And was it just you, or did you have friends?
No, it was the usual. There were the 4 or 5 of us, but you know, it counted. They all bottled out. So, and I was just up for it anyway. So I got a ticket and went. And once my first session, got my arse handed to me, but I was hooked, absolutely hooked. So
brilliant.
Turned up in jeans and a sweater, and everybody had Lycra on. I didn't really. Anyway, it's good. And yeah, from there, just sort of carried on from there.
So I think I know what your first race was. Do you recall your first race?
I think it was Birmingham Wheels.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think it was before the days of categories. I think I was in an age group. I think it was in the men's age group.
Yeah.
I know I didn't do too well.
Well, I'll tell you, this is where I've got, right?
Okay.
Is it 4th of May 1986.
Wow.
So, yeah. And when you think about 86, that's going to be 40 years next year.
Wow.
Nearly 40 years.
Yeah.
And it was a 1500 metre handicap.
Oh, okay.
And you were off 70 metres.
Wow.
And you were 5th in your heat.
Oh, okay, fair.
Anyway, some names for you. Ahead of you was Huey Doggett.
Okay.
Del Boy, Derek Ritchie.
Yeah.
Robert Rose. And
Andrew
Newton.
Okay.
And they were in your heat, yeah. So
Bloody
they
hell.
qualified. But interestingly, when I was looking back through some records, is that there were 2 races that day.
Right.
There was the handicap, and there was a scratch race of 3,000 metres.
Okay.
But you didn't enter the 3,000.
Yeah, from memory, and I am sort of this is from memory. I think I got. See, the thing when you got to remember is, my first race was the first race I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, you know, when most people sort of go along to a race and say, oh, I like the look of that. Milton Keynes said to me, come along to a race, and I never went. And then I said, right, okay, I entered a race, and they said, maybe you should look at a race beforehand. I said, no, it'll be okay. So the first race I seen, I was actually in.
Right.
I didn't realise how fast it was. I think I bottled it. Going for 3,000. I got my arse handed to me on the 15, even though I was 7. Because I remember, it's starting to come back to me. I remember thinking, the start line's back there. I've got this head start. I'll be all right here. And I got battered. So I think come the last race, I don't think I did, because literally I was very much, I used to sort of, anything would make me give up back then. You know, I thought I was better than what I was. And I got my arse handed to me, and I probably thought, sod that, I ain't doing the next race. So it's probably something along them lines why I never did the second race. So yeah, it is.
That makes sense to you,
yeah.
So did you? had you trained? How much have you trained up to that point, or was it quite recently? Had you been joined?
Yeah, so I think I've been training with Milton Keynes for maybe, I don't think it's more than 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, because this would have been like one of the first races.
Yeah,
of the season. Well.
Yeah, like I say, I think I've joined Milton Keynes in sort of like the February or the March maybe. And then they did say, you know, come along and see a couple of races. I can't remember if there was indoor races. There might have been before then. But I know I didn't bottle out. I was meant to go to a couple of races and I didn't, just to see it all. And the first race in the end, I said, well, I meant to do it. I may as well just go along. I didn't realise we'd be the first race on. So, and yeah, so there you go.
Well, in the Milton Keynes team, there's people like Richard Hartley, obviously.
Yeah, that's
Brian,
right. Yeah,
Richard,
yeah.
Mark Arthur.
That's right, yeah, Mark Arthur,
and Jock, Guy Walsh.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So, where did you train? You said the Agora. Was there just the Agora?
The Agora, I think they trained as well. Milton Keynes train station had like a big forecourt. We trained there.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I think for a while we trained at Milton Keynes Bowl, the perimeter road around there. They're the ones that come to mind. Yes, they were the three, but most of it was at the Agora to start off with. But going from indoors to outdoors again. And I think that was another thing which messed me up, because I did all my training in the Agora, then I went and did a track race at Birmingham Wheels. It's completely different, which I didn't realise at the time.
Well, you skipped a couple of after your like 1500 metres, your inauguration at Birmingham. You skipped a couple of races. Then a couple of weeks later, you went to Herne Bay.
Okay.
And it was a 500 metres and a 10,000 metres.
I can't remember what happened there. To be fair, I really can't remember what happened there. So.
Did you, I suppose it's really early on, so it's difficult to ask this question, I suppose, in some respects, but did you think that, like, you was a sprinter back then, or did you think that, like, you would just find your feet?
I preferred the shorter distances, only because they were sort of, I don't know, I just preferred the shorter distance. I think maybe, if truth be told, looking back, I was too lazy to do the longer distances.
Right.
So most of my training was sort of short distance stuff, and then, you know, probably just got better, but I sort of enjoyed them more. There was less tactics, wasn't there? You sort of just put your head down and went. So, you know, I wasn't a very tactical person.
Well, in the 500 metres, I've picked out some names as well on this one, because this made me laugh. So you've got Andrew Newton, seems like you miss him a lot. Yeah. In your heat this was, and you were fourth, by the way. Right, okay. Behind Andrew Newton, John Mullane, and Andy O'Geist.
Okay, yeah.
So, do you think you was aware of, I suppose would you have been aware of the calibre of some of these guys?
I was aware that Andrew Newton I didn't know too much about. John Mullane I did. Like I say, that name got handed around a lot. So obviously if I was up against him, I probably thought I had no chance anyway. So I mean, I sort of knew some of the exploits of John Mullane. And John Mullane was always quite friendly to me, to be fair. Yeah. You know, because I was from Northampton, he was sort of knocking around Northampton still back then. And he always used to sort of come over, you know, I remember, you know, now and again, give me a bit of encouragement and show me a few points. I always had time for John Mullane. Yeah. But I know he was, you know, in his day he was quite a handy skater, so, you know.
Yeah, he was such a softie, wasn't he?
I didn't say that, John.
He'll watch this, I'm sure. 1986 was quite a sporadic year, and of course it's your first year. You've been doing like a couple of months training. It's quite a sporadic year, and you don't actually race again then until September. Okay. You make your first trip to Tatum Park. Right. An Alexandra Pace event. It's an 800 metre handicap, probably that trophy we got here, and as an handicap and a relay, but not any much success. But do you remember going to Tatum Park for the first time?
Yeah, I remember how big it was. I remember sort of thinking, no, this place is huge, you know, how do people skate around these corners? That's one thing which got into my head. I remember Brian Hartley sort of taking me round, you know, thinking the warm, you know, he used to do the warm before the races, and I was having trouble just getting around the track. I just couldn't, you know, comprehend how you would, you know, the corners were just a lot bigger than I was expecting to. And that was my first introduction to Tatum Park, and the surface wasn't actually great back then either. But yeah, I remember the corners, was thinking, how do you get around these corners? You know, it wasn't the sort of thing, you know.
So it wasn't your Agora?
Yeah, it wasn't your Agora basically. I think that's pretty much what it was, and I remember just thinking, there's, you know, I'm going to have difficulty here, but I do remember that, yeah.
Well, and then the weekend after, so it's the 28th September. So
Christ, homework here.
But 28th, but like 86. But it's the championships at Birmingham Wheels. It's the relay championships, and you helped Milton Keynes come second in the relay.
Oh, okay.
And I know Herne Bay won it. Herne Bay won it. They were the clear favourites to win it, and they won it. But Milton Keynes beat the Palace Club to second place.
I can't
You don't remember that?
No, I must admit I don't.
It must have been. So the team was you, Brian, Richard, and Mark Arthur.
Okay.
You don't remember that? You don't remember that?
I don't know. I remember doing relay practice, but I don't remember the race.
Wow. Yeah. So that's less than 12 months on. But
Wow. No, honestly, I don't remember. No, I don't know why I don't remember that, but I don't remember that one.
Well, at the start of the 86-87 season, you do get your first medal.
Right.
And now it's you get a silver in a 1500 metre handicap at Birmingham Wheels.
Okay.
And it's the 12th of October, and just behind your teammate Mark Arthur.
All right.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you this question, but you're looking as if like you don't remember this. But I was going to say, did you race him for it, or did you give it him?
To be honest, I can't remember. I would have probably, because Mark Arthur was another skater I was in total awe of, and I did have this I did have this thing back then when I first came onto the scene. I didn't believe myself fully, so if I seen a name come out, I was thinking, oh, he's a good skater. I probably wouldn't have given as much as I should have done. You know what I mean? I remember being back then, not a lot of confidence. So if someone had literally, or they had to look at me a certain way, or I thought, oh, he's a better skater than me. And that, what it's like, you've sort of beat yourself up before it's even happened, so it would have probably been along those sort of lines. But yeah, from what I can remember, I did used to sort of, as another skater I used to worship, so...
Mark Arthur.
Yeah, so...
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you get your first medal, so now you're into like your second season of racing,
right.
So, but you've probably you've only been skating probably 12 months, really, probably less than 12 months in terms of the training you've been doing and whatever. So but you get your first medal, and then and on the same day as a 5,000 metres, and you finish fourth. You just miss out on a medal.
Okay.
Could you feel yourself getting better? Do you think?
To be honest, in the early days, I think I just remember enjoying it more.
Right. So
it wasn't a case of feeling I was getting better. I remember I used to enjoy it, and if I enjoyed it, I'd probably put more into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, sort of when I first came onto it, I never thought I'd ever do anything with it. You know what I mean? It's just nice just to be good enough to sort of skate. Then I'd go back home and say, I actually race. You know what I mean? I don't just go around the rink. I'm a speed skater. Oh wow, you're a speed. You actually go and race. And it's more for that more than anything else. So you know what I mean? And so start to pick up a few medals was sort of a bit of a bonus, to be fair. I didn't really, like I say, I think my confidence back then wasn't the greatest. So just skating was just nice just to skate.
I remember again around this time, about November time actually, that you come second in an indoor two-man relay, you and Richard Hartley.
I remember that. Yeah, I do remember that one. That was Southend.
Southend it was.
Yeah, I do remember that one. Now I think that was the first time I actually felt good about myself. So I do remember that one. Because I surprised myself on that one. I didn't think we'd come anywhere, but yeah, I do remember that.
Remember who won?
Was it with Andrew Newton? No, I don't know then.
Me and Ian Ashby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and tell you why I remember that is because it was the first time that me and Ashby had skated together in a relay team, because he'd just joined the club.
Oh, okay.
He skated for Own Bay, and then he skated for us.
Yes.
And we went in, and I remember, it's not my story, it's your story really, but I just remember that we come back from Southend, and we were laughing about stuff and taking a mick, and we missed the turning for the M1 and ended up halfway around to Heathrow. Anyway, so that in a minute it was that loud it made your ears bleed. But it was so you and Richard.
Yeah, I do remember that. That's when I actually thought, I'm not too bad. That's why I do remember that race. I was quite surprised we did okay on that, and that way, like I say, for whatever reason I got it made. Yeah, I still remember a blue and white skin suit, which was. Fenland, was it?
Fenland, they were also in the mix.
Yeah. So that's all I can remember. So.
But you start to race quite regular now. So you're quite regular on the circuit by now. And when we come to July '87, the British Championships on Taunton Park. But they announced on the day that they're going to postpone the time trial to September. Can you remember that at all?
I sort of half remember that. Was the timing equipment? Was there something wrong with the timing equipment?
It was. Yeah, they couldn't get it to work.
That's it. Yeah.
And they said, and I think there was a couple of people who'd done their time trial, and then they couldn't get to it, and they stopped it, and they rerun it in the September.
Yeah, I do remember something about the timing equipment not working, but but that's probably yeah. My memory's not that great to be fair.
No, well, it's funny. It's
yeah.
only because I'm not preparing for this. I'm looking back and think, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at stuff, so I get that. But because another thing, whether you remember this or not as well, which is really interesting for me, is that on the same day, in July, it's the 1500 metres, and you're in a heat with myself and Rowan Arlo.
Right.
And as we sprint for the line, only 500ths separate us for the final, and you miss out. Plays in the semi-final.
Oh, wow.
You miss out plays in the semi-final by 100th of a second. 100th of a second. So, but you got no reflection.
To be honest,
I wouldn't have remembered.
I probably came off that race buzzing, thinking I managed to race with them. So, but I don't remember sort of missing out on the final. I probably that happy. That I was probably happy with my performance. To be fair.
I mean, so, Rome was no slouch. And,
exactly, yeah. So if that was the case, I'd have probably been just happy anyway, and that would probably put it in the back of my mind, I would imagine. So, but wow.
Well, then you get your first scratch medal you come third in a 5,000 metres at Herne Bay. Okay. Ashley Arlo wins, and Ashby's second, and you're third. But then as we get to September, it's a 300 metre time trial at Tatum, the postponed one, and you come second to Ashley Arlo.
Yeah, I do remember that as well.
Was you surprised by that?
Yeah, I did think that was a fluke. To be fair, I knew I knew my leg speed was good.
Yeah,
but I never thought I was that quick. I thought when I was going, I thought I looked quick, but wasn't quick. If that makes sense. So you're looking thinking, Christ, he's moving quick. But I never thought I was that quick. So I thought if I can come away top, I remember thinking top 5, top 6, I'll be happy. You know, then to come second to something like that, you know, I was shocked. But then I had a word with myself thinking, you know, maybe if I put a bit more effort in, you know, maybe this could be a regular thing. So that was another sort of like moment, thinking, oh, actually, you know, maybe just sort of put my head down, because I'm still larking around a bit of that. I was training.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I was sort of more enjoying it. You know what I mean? Didn't care what happened, and you know, just happy just to be taking part. But I remember that, and I was shocked.
Yeah, well, he was. I mean, you know, people who watch this, Ashley Arlo is a great skater. And he didn't long after these junior European titles and in the sprints. He was such an excellent skater, an excellent sprinter. So that was. You know, I mean, I could never medal in a time trial, but he was, you know, that was even just to come second to Ashley was a good.
That was sort of like a massive light bulb moment. Yeah, definitely.
So, but on the day you're skating unattached for an SA.
Yeah.
Why was that?
I had a falling out with Milton Keynes, so I left.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, from memory, I think there was. I mean, looking back, some of it I don't think it was my fault. I remember there was a race. The short version was, I think there was a race in France or Belgium, an international race a few weeks beforehand.
Okay.
I turned up in Milton Keynes, sort of like I parked the car in Wolverton, got a lift from Wolverton to, I'd like to say it was Jenny Hartley's flat. I could be wrong.
It wouldn't have been in
Alison Hartley's flat, sorry. In Milton Keynes. Now, if these people are watching, I want to correct me on this. Yeah. And we're sitting around there, and we were all meant to get a lift down to Dover.
Yeah. And
I think I was meant to go in Mark Arthur's car.
Right.
And Mark Arthur turned around to me and said, well, no one told me you're coming in my car, so you're not coming with me. So I remember sitting there thinking, well, I'm in the middle of Milton Keynes here, and no one wants me. So I remember just leaving the flat and walking back from Milton Keynes to Wolverton.
Right.
I didn't know where I was going. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was that pissed off. And I got home, my mum said, "You're never skating for that club again." So, so literally, that was the last time I was unattached because.
You never went abroad.
That race I missed out. I never went abroad. So literally, I mean, I remember Jim Lana at the time. He was in my corner saying, you know, that's out of order, and I think
because he was. That's right.
Yeah, and I remember he encouraged me. Said you can't be doing this. He said you're better than that. You just can't be doing that at all. So I left. Yeah, because I did. I remember being treated. If someone's correct me on this, fine. But I remember at the time feeling really badly done by. And just walking literally, because I'd only been about 18, 19 at the time. Walking in the middle of the night back from Milton Keynes to Wolverton to pick up my car. you know, no one offered me a lift back or anything like that. And, you know, I got back in the middle of the morning, Mum's said, shouldn't you be, you know, halfway to France now? And I had to explain it to her. She said, and they said, Dad, they're not taking you. I said, I don't know why they won't take me. They just said, you know, Mark Arthur said, you're not coming with me. So,
wow.
Yeah, and that was the last time I spoke to Mark Arthur. So yeah, so that's the reason why I left. So then I was unattached for a bit, and then I can't remember what I did after that. But yeah, so long story short, that's the reason why I left. You know, I'm not sure it's a misunderstanding or whatever, but I can remember just feeling this big.
Right.
You know, so.
I can imagine.
So,
well,
yeah.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't tell it that often. Because on one hand, you know, Brian Hartley did a lot for me, and a few people in Kington, so I don't like slagging the club off, but I did think, you know, no one sort of came to my defence when that all happened, and I just thought
I'm done.
I'm done. I just didn't think I got treated a bit too badly, you know, and I thought, you know, even when my mum had nothing to do with skating, you can't skate for them, and Jim Lyon was like, you shouldn't be skating for them, and blah blah.
Yeah.
So I went unattached for a while. Yeah.
So well, the following season you joined Northampton. Was Northampton an established club?
No, it wasn't. It was something I started with Dave Samuels. I remember Dave
I think I
Samuels.
Samuels and Winston Samuels.
Yeah, exactly. So we started the old Northampton club again.
Yeah.
And so that's how Northampton. And then a few other people from the rink came on board. So we started that because
so the club when John left,
yeah, that's it.
And the old Northampton club in the room
purple,
tops, the purple
yeah.
top, had stopped then.
Exactly. Yeah, but Dave Samuels, I think he still had. We knew roughly how the club operated with the training, because I think he skated with the old Northampton.
That's right. I think he had, yes.
For a little bit. So
yeah.
you know.
He even set up his own club called Silver Blacks.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, off the back of Northampton.
That's right.
Yeah. So that he started that one off after Northampton. So Northampton, like I say, he helped me set that up, and because I wasn't too sure who to skate for. I mean. So, you know, and I remember talking to Dave. Dave said, I want to get back into skating. We'll start.
How do you know Dave?
Just from the roller rink. So I just know him literally from the roller. He was another skater, you know, sort of a bit of a local legend with the skates. Him and Winston used to skate, and I remember he used to sort of talk to him at the roller rink, and we just got talking. I told him the predicament. He said, we'll see if we can get it started. And I think he made a few phone calls and showed me how to do it. And that's how Northampton started. So yes, that's.
And is that where you got the colours, the red, white and green? Is that
the red, white and green? Yeah, that came later on, but I can't remember why we ended up with those colours.
No, in actual fact,
I think we started with blue and white.
Yes, of course you did.
But I can't remember why I really can't.
How it transferred.
Yeah, transferred over that. Someone will have to remind me of that. Well, I cannot remember how we ended up in the red, white and green, because it was more of a. We looked more like a European team then, more than anything else. But no, I can't remember why we transferred over. I really can't.
So in 1988, so you set up this club Northampton.
Yeah.
And who else was in the club at that particular point in time?
Obviously Winston. I think Darren Smith. Remember?
Yeah,
Darren Smith?
Of course. Yeah,
I think he was in it. I think Vicky Burkett. Obviously, the mum and dad were helping out. I don't think Chris Ampadu had come over then. By then, Morgan Price. I think there was only like 4 or 5 of us there with a few other kids. I think we had the I can't remember, it's called Roberta. There's a girl called Roberta, I can't remember what it's called, a Speedy, and she had 2 sisters.
Yeah.
Booth, Michael Booth, they were the Booths.
That's it, the Booth,
so there were a few kids involved. There was a young lad called Ashley, but I can't remember his second name, he's watching, sorry about that. With Ashley and someone else. So it was quite a few kids.
Did Tony Bain skate for Northampton? Leicester,
yeah.
Similar colours.
Exactly.
The quick story on Roberta Booth is I was walking a dog, and some years ago, I'm going back probably about 6-7 years ago, and I was walking a dog, and she got this woman who was walking a dog, got a boxer dog.
Okay.
And I can't even remember how we got into talking about skating, whatever, and she goes, "My name's Roberta Booth." And I went, "Oh, really?" So, and I'd never heard of her, but she knew you. But anyway, that's another.
Their family were very good in the club. They helped out start the club. The Booths, they did help start the club up.
So you're in category 2 in ACS, and this is predominantly your category. And your main role was a Chris Ampadu, Sutton Atkins.
Yeah.
Do you recall some of those battles?
Yeah, category 2 was good because it was like. You knew you were almost there, you want to be with the big boys in category 1, but you're in sort of it was nice sort of to be fighting with these other people up and coming, you know. So even though you knew you weren't the best, it was nice to sort of be thinking, I'm knocking on the door, and you know, I'm almost there. And it was that time when, you know, I was at the time and age when you change your training slightly and you see the results. Then it either be better or worse, and you go back. So there was a lot of tweaks being made there. So I do remember that. You know, you try out maybe a new wheel or a new sort of way of skating, you know, a new push or whatever, and you'd see the results on a Sunday and you go back to the drawing board. So I remember like that, because they were just knocking on the door to get into category 1. So, you know, you always remember sort of being nearer and nearer and nearer. So yeah, they were pretty good days actually in category 2.
Well, despite your category 2, so again, 1988 British Championships, and bearing in mind that Ashley Arlo's still around, and he's going to go to the European Championships in August. So you come second to him again in the time trial, but probably, I'm going to say more impressively, I don't know if it's more impressive, but you get third in the 1500 metres behind Harlow and Tony Marriott.
Yeah, that was a surprise, to be fair.
I mean,
that was a surprise, but I do think, you know, with all due respect to the skaters back then, I think that race was quite a slow race.
Right.
And I think I had the legs at the end to sort of make a bit of a difference. So I'm not saying I was the 1500 metre man, I just think it was a slow enough race, and then it all exploded. From memory, I'm sure, you know, the first lap or half a lap or, you know, a couple of laps were quite slow. So I had enough time to get into it, and, you know, obviously no one's expected to do anything, but I had a bit of a sprinter's chance at the end to sort of, you know, put in the 300 metres and, you know, nick a medal.
Yeah, but you must be feeling now, I'm knocking on the door here.
Yeah, it's only because it started. I remember some of the races which started a bit slow. I always think maybe I've got a chance. If they started off fast, I'd be like, no chance. But if they started slow, it's almost like a warm up before you start to pick up. And if they only had like 2 laps to go, you know, if I was still there, I'd think, okay, let's give it a crack. I'd have nothing to lose, you know what I mean? So, and at that, like I say, at that point, I had nothing to lose. You know what I mean? I wasn't, you know, one of the big names. So, you know, if I failed, no one would have expected any more, you know. So you just, you know, just gave it your all, and sometimes it paid off, you know, sometimes it didn't.
So people, it's now, you've been in a couple of years, and people start to look at you, Errol, is a sprinter, Errol the sprinter, right? Yeah. You know, and by many at that time. Is that how you saw yourself, or did you think that you were underestimated for the longer distances?
Yeah, I probably saw myself as a sprinter, but maybe looking back, maybe that's because that's how other people saw me. So maybe I just saw myself because of that. It wasn't a bad thing, you know what I mean? It was just, you know, I was quite handy over the short distances, and that's how people knew me. So maybe I just sort of just took on that persona, you know. But you know, but in training, you know, we used to train up to sort of like do 10,000 metres.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. Was it geared towards sprints?
So a lot of the training, even though a lot of people thought I just did sprints during the training, you know, you got to remember. I mean, I was part of a cycling club back then,
right?
So the stamina was starting to come on.
Yeah.
And so I did quite a bit of cycling, you know, on the Sundays we weren't, especially out of season, you know, wasn't that good at it, but the stamina would be built from there. And we used to do, like I say, you know, some, you know, longer distance stuff, you know, during the winter anyway, sort of with the training. So my base wasn't too bad for the slightly longer distances. So that did help, you know, with the 1500s and anything above to support me to be there, not necessarily being the top 3 or 4 or 5, but I could complete the longer races if, you know, if push comes after the shove.
Who was responsible for the training of the Northampton club?
Graham Burkett sort of gave it some structure. Before he came along, we sort of just turned up, you know, we'd have a chat and say, right, let's put our skates on, we'd skate around and not do much. But Graham, I must admit, did give it some sort of structure. So he'd say, you know, okay, well, let's have a warm up, let's do this, you know, let's work on that. And he used to video the races as well. So he'd give you a videotape and you'd watch it, you know, the race you did a few weeks before, you could watch yourself, and then that was quite handy because you could critique yourself and then you think, okay, maybe if I did that, or maybe I wasn't too far away from that person, so maybe if I tried a bit harder I could be. So that helped as well. But yeah, the distances, I think, you know, we were looking on trying to do a few races abroad, so obviously I had to have, you know, a few. You don't want to go all the way to, for instance, Belgium and just say I can do 300 metres, because it would have been a waste of the trip, wouldn't it? So you know, it's all, you know, yourself, you know, from the gun, bang. In those days, bang, you're off, and it's just like, oh my God, you know. So you had to train.
Where did you train?
We trained Marehold Car Park.
Yeah,
at the top floor, and we also had permission to train. I think it's changed now. They used to have an upper school in Lings. They used to have a netball court there.
That's where we had a race on there.
Yeah, we had a race there. Yeah,
That's
so we
right.
trained there. They were the two main places we trained.
Okay.
So
That's
yeah,
gone now, isn't it? The school's gone.
I think the school.
Oh,
I think
both
they've
have gone, I
I think they've turned it into an academy.
Right.
The Nail car park's still there, but you can't get.
You can't get into it.
Like I say, I mean, it's basically, you know, you do have to pay. But no, they just walk into it and skate. But no.
And were they them the predominant places that you trained, was it?
Yeah. So they were definitely the prominent places.
So throughout 1989, then you still continue to race in Cat 2, and you're getting quite a lot of success. To be fair, did you start to think I should be in Cat 1?
Yeah, I remember the winter I was in Cat 2 and I missed out on Cat 1 by quite a bit. I remember, I can't remember what job I was doing, but I was starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning going training. I'd be skating around Links at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd train at 11 o'clock at night on my own. So I was doing a lot of training on my own then. And so, you know, I thought if I could just push a little bit more, you know, maybe I could get in there, because I admired everybody in Category 1, but I knew it wasn't something I could just walk into. I knew I'd have to have, you know, a bit of fitness just to hang with those guys. So
was it an aspiration, was it?
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. You know, you sort of in Category 2, and it's like anything, you start looking, you're thinking, you know, I could probably get in there with a bit more training. So I do remember training at silly hours, you know, before and after work, just to try and get into Category 1. I do remember that quite a lot. You know, is quite a few relationships were sort of broken back then, and friendships and people going out, and I wasn't going out skating. So, you know, I did, you know, there was 1 year I desperately wanted to get into Category 1. So how
did you feel like when the likes of Sooty Atkins was suddenly elevating to Cat 1?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, obviously I didn't realise how hard he was training. So at first I was sort of a bit begrudging, but, you know, looking back and I actually got to know him and realised how much effort he was putting in, then, you know, obviously, you know, you're thinking, well, fair is fair. It's not if you walked in, even though I didn't realise half the stuff he was doing. I just thought, how come he's got up there so quick, you know? But yeah, once I got to know him and I realised what he was doing for training, then it all made sense, you know. There was just no free gifts, really, was there? So
No. Certainly weren't back then. I know that, like in '89 again, so you get your medal again, though it's a bronze, but you get another medal in the time trial again in '89, and at Herne Bay you come third in the 500 metres behind Marriott and Wordsworth.
Yeah, and that was a shock as well. But it was a shock, but it was nice because I think in the training starting to pay off. But yeah, you're still unsure on the day, as anybody would know. You know, you do all your training, but you're not sure how it's going to turn out on the day. But yeah, it was a nice shock. But I did the training. You know, I mean, I was skating a lot by then, doing quite a few hours a week by then. So
why do you think you was kept in Category 2? I mean, like you've got the championship results.
Truthfully, I think I was an arsehole, basically.
Oh really?
I think I just pissed a lot of people off.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah, I did, and you know, and I do say.
You thought the establishment didn't want to.
Yeah, but I think half it was because me. You know, I could be quite arrogant sometimes, and you know, in fair play, they just wanted to sort of just, you know, just take the wind out of my sails. And I look back and thinking, I would have probably done the same. You know, so I don't grudge anybody anything. If I had a better attitude back then, I think I would have got further quicker. But my attitude, even look back and I do cringe, thinking, you know, sometimes I said this and I said that, and maybe I shouldn't have. So yeah, lessons learned.
So, it's interesting because to be fair is that I mean obviously I was racing at the time. I never ever saw you in that light.
Okay.
I never, you know, really? and I don't know if it's because we were a category apart or whether I don't know, but I certainly never I certainly never saw Errol the arrogant.
Okay, no, I thought sometimes I thought, you know, looking back, sometimes I thought it probably could be, and maybe that's what sort of stunted things. I could be wrong, but you know, I think there's sometimes I could have been you know, spoke to people a bit better. I think.
Not only you know.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And I look back thinking, oh, you know, that's maybe, and it's probably deservedly so. You know what I mean.
Well, you got. Did you get banned or did you send a letter?
Suspended. Like I say, for calling rude names to the judges. I think I got suspended twice.
Oh, did you?
I could be wrong. I definitely got suspended once.
Yeah, I did find a letter there, and I thought, you know, and I thought you got a 6-month suspension.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which probably explains why 1990 wasn't as, you know, successful as some of them. I don't know,
Yeah.
Okay, so you think like you're saying, but it could have been an establishment thing.
Yeah, but I think
less
lack of respect. I think, and
okay.
and which is the same. Because I was brought up with respect, and I think sometimes I could be a bit disrespectful. So yeah, looking back, I would have probably done the same to me if I was in a position of power as such. Anyway, so.
All right. Well, 1990 is the first time, as I said to you, and I'm not sure why that was, but 1990 is certainly it's the first year for a number of years that you don't win a medal of any colour in the British Championships. But the following year, 91, is a real pivotal year for yourself. In the May, one of the first races of the season, you placed third in the Keith Lee Boot.
I'll tell you why. What happened in 1990, I was so pissed off.
Yeah.
I got a job at a mountain bike shop and I joined the mountain bike racing team.
Okay.
I did a lot of training with them and they were sort of toying me the idea of just giving up skating. But I did gain a lot of fitness when I did mountain bike racing, and I can't remember what happened. Then I thought, right, no, let's just get back into skating properly. So that much I do remember. 1990, I was placing quite well doing mountain biking. Used to race all over the country. So, but I was still skating at the same time, but wasn't taking it quite seriously. But then I did refocus back to skating, so that would make sense. Like I say, I was sort of in two camps in 1990.
What was the switch back to skating? Why switch back to skating?
I think I actually enjoyed it more. Okay. I think literally it was. I tried the mountain bike, and even though I did like it, I did enjoy the skating more. So, I went back to skating, well, I was always skating, but I think I put more emphasis on the skating than I did instead of the cycling. And I think, came back with a little bit more fitness. And so 99, that would not surprise me. I wasn't that prominent in 1990, but 1991 upwards.
Because like I said, you come third in the Keith Lee Boot at 10,000 metres.
Yeah.
Right, but third in the May, it is 91, and you win the Seagrave Cup Handicap.
Yeah.
And then in July, you win 2 British titles.
I know.
And you win the 1500 metres, and you win the time trial. Unusually, the 1500 metres was the day before the time trial. But what was it like to win your first British title?
Even now, you're thinking it wasn't real. I sort of accepted all the rest of it, but it just wasn't real. I sort of half expected to do well, and it was a pleasant surprise that I'd won. But even, it did take quite a few months for it to sink in. It's just like people saying congratulations and it never really registered. It was literally months later, I thought, shit, I won. But I think it was just a perfect storm. I think that weekend, for whatever reason, I was just in a good place, and, I was firing all cylinders. That's probably almost a pinnacle. I was very fit that weekend for whatever reason. I did feel, like I could put my skates on and I could skate. It was just that perfect weekend. So
can you remember the final of the 1500 metres? How that played out?
And I sort of remember halfway from memory. I remember getting a half decent start, and I do remember sort of going backwards in the middle and having to work my way towards the front again. But the actual final kick for the line, I can't remember that. I must admit, I can't remember that. But I do remember being disappointed with the start and the middle of it. But the final kick, I can't remember who actually was there and who I was racing against. But I do remember sort of swearing myself, because then everything sort of went from bad to good within a heartbeat. So.
Well, I think, and I've not got the records here, but like 91, I think that was the year people like Dave McFarlane. Well, I know Dave, so it was the North London, like you'd got Dave McFarlane, Tony Marriott.
That's right, yeah.
Adrian Wordsworth. And to take their scalps, in a race would have been a massive achievement.
That's right, and I think what you're saying that, that's something I was telling my daughter a few years ago. I remember, the 1500 on Saturday, the 300 on Sunday, and I wanted to skate for England in the Europeans a few months later, and I think they took one of the Kiwi guys.
They did. David McFarlane.
Yeah, that's it.
Because he comes second. So David McFarlane comes second to you in the time trial.
And they took him.
And he got a bronze at the Europeans.
And I remember saying, and I still think that's when I was still regarded as a bit of an arrogant person. I remember saying to my daughter, if I'd have been a more sensible person then, that was my best year, I might have got a European medal. Because, on the day, then again, I don't know, nothing taken away from David McFarlane. He might have improved significantly between the championships and the Euros, so I'm not taking anything away from him. But all I know is if he could do it, I might have been able to do it as well. That's the way I look at it. So you know,
I was there. He was on the road.
Yeah.
On the road circuit.
Yeah. So, but he was a fantastic scout, taking nothing away from him at all. But
well, you set a new British record for starters.
Oh wow! Okay.
So your time was 27.16 seconds.
It was a quads as well, wasn't it?
And it was quads. Yeah. It was a new British record.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and as you say, they then took him.
Yeah.
He'd skated for New Zealand in '89.
That's right. Did he have dual citizenship?
He had dual nationality, because then he skated for Great Britain in '91.
Yeah.
So
I remember that sort, and I remember saying to my daughter Lena at the time about how you should be nice to people, because maybe that year they didn't take me because I was a bit of a so and so, and I'll say again, I could be wrong, I might be reading too much into it. And they took me, and he did really well, and I think I was just as good as him. But, you know.
Well, you'd proven, put it this way, you'd proven it in the time trial that you were better than him.
Yeah, but like I say, taking nothing away from it, he might have went away and sort of, you know, really upped his game. So maybe I wouldn't have been as good as the Europeans. We'll never know. We'll never know. But he was a fantastic skater. I'm taking nothing away from him.
Yeah.
He
was a good skater because he went to the Worlds as well.
Yeah, he did.
Tony didn't go to the Worlds.
Okay.
Tony didn't go to the Worlds that year.
Right.
In actual fact, these Europeans in '91 were the last time he put on a British jersey.
Wow.
But yeah, so because the team was McFarlane, myself, Sutton Atkins, and Adrian Wordsworth.
Okay.
So,
right.
But yeah, it's a shame really, because I think, like you said, I think '91 was a real pivotal year for you.
It was, yeah.
Pretty smoked, certainly in the sprints, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
I did put a lot of, like I say, did a lot of training sort of 1991. Around then I did spend a lot of time training, so I think that's when I sort of really sort of up for it then. But
the only thing I'd say about Dave, to be fair, is that he was also a good all-rounder.
Very true. Very true. He was. That's very true.
But hey.
Yeah.
Okay, so still back in Northampton, are you seen as like in the Northampton club as the main skater, the lead skater?
I think it was a toss-up. To be fair, I think me and Chris were seen as equals.
Was Chris in the club at that time? I don't know.
I know he was training with us.
Right.
I'm sure he was training with us back then. Or was he? Was it the year after?
I know he was in Northampton in '92. I don't know when he joined actually. He could have been 91.
I think he started training sort of. I could be wrong.
I think he was in '90.
I think he was training sort of like late 1991-ish. But I mean, back then I was still doing a lot of training on my own. So even though I was training with the club, because we had some kids and stuff like that, there was a lot of training I was doing on my own. Anyway.
I've got it here. In '92, you're joined by Chris Ampadu.
Oh, okay. So I think he came.
So he's been training because he's been seeing Vicky.
Exactly. So I'm sure he was sort of a few sessions, sort of that sort of time, and we did do a lot of training together. I remember sort of doing dark nights at Marehold car park with him. So that would have been sort of maybe during the autumn, the winter of '91, and you know that was sort of. It sort of, you know, we bounced off each other because we were both seen as sprinters. So
talk me through. We before we put the camera on, we touched on it. But so how talk me through Chris's arrival into the team.
Yeah, like I say, it was quite a shock from memory. Literally, I knew he was seeing Vicky, but I just knew he was a Birmingham skater, and you know, he stayed at open. But from what I remember, he just got presented at the club. So this is Chris skating for Northampton now, and I'm like. Okay, you know, and we just sort of got on with it, you know, sort of just arrived and that was it, and he just joined in the sessions. Yeah, well, to be honest, we got on from day one. Anyway.
Did you? Was it a welcome addition for you?
Yeah, it was probably good because it was someone else for me to sort of train with, and at the time, I was doing at that level. Yeah, at the time I was doing a lot of training on my own. I mean, I was doing because not a lot of people know. I mean, those who remember Morgan Price, he was very good at training. But you know, God forgive me for saying this, and he'd probably laugh if he was here now. Yeah. He was shit at racing. But training, you'd put him on the front of a pack, and he'd be pulling you. He'd be like a diesel.
Really?
Yeah, he would. But for racing, I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know. But training, you know, and he used to sort of, you know, I'd sit behind him sometimes, and he'll do some lead outs for me. And so apart from him, and Chris was a welcome addition as well. So he just. Another dynamic, so you know, there's someone else to bounce off, you know, because he was another sort of quick guy anyway. So it did help with respect him coming over, I guess, you know, because then a lot of things did get quicker, I suppose, faster, really, you know.
Well, your you're elevated to Cat 1 finally.
Yeah.
And how did you find the transition?
Hard, actually.
Really?
I did find it difficult. I don't know if it showed, but I found the race between Cat 2 and Cat 1. I wish it was a Cat 1.5, you know what I mean? I wish there was. It just felt like, you know, Cat 2 was still playing with the little boys and Cat 1 was completely different, you know.
Really?
I remember doing a race, and I'm sure if he's watching this, I think it was Rowan. Ashley was older than Harlow.
Rowan's the older one.
Rowan's the older one.
But it had been stopped by then. Ashley would have been competing at this.
I can remember on one of my first races,
Well,
I'm skating on free, I think I'm on the front, I can't remember which one it was, and I remember him sort of skating next to me and saying, get to the back. Yeah, I would sort of just suck back like that. You know, he wasn't.
That had been in the early days.
Yeah, so, you know, he wasn't threatening, he just said, get to the back. And I just thought, okay, I'm off. You know, and I remember thinking, it's almost like going to a big school, you know.
That sounds more like Rowan than Ashley.
Yeah, but anyway, but yeah, and I sort of remember that. And but I mean, I wasn't going to do anything that was one of my first races in Category 1, and yeah. So, but
you found the transition difficult.
Very difficult. Yeah, I did. I mean, I managed to get into it in the end, but I do remember thinking, this is nothing like Category 2. This is like another 3 or 4 levels above, you know. But maybe, you know, I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's just nerves, but I do remember thinking, Christ, you know, this is totally different. I remember thinking to myself, you know, it did cross my mind at the time, thinking, do I just tank it and just go back down to Category 2? And I was tempted, but obviously I didn't. But it was literally that big. I was thinking, I'm not ready for this. I'm just not ready for it. But yeah.
So we, as I said, with Chris arriving then, so did the training change? Did it become more intense?
I remember the sprints did. We did a lot more 300s and 500s, and that sort of kept the legs quick. The training did take on a different role because with Chris coming in and the Burkitts getting involved more, we did start to sort of try to go abroad a bit more as well. So we'd have to start doing longer distances and stuff like that. And Chris was quite good for that because he did more distance than me back then anyway. So that sort of elevated my sort of, you know, the legs and stuff like that. I could do the distance, but not that quick.
Yeah.
Whereas Chris was a bit quicker over a distance than me. So having Chris in, you know, that sort of then, you know, sort of like 3,000, 5,000 metres, you know, he could keep a pace quicker than I could. I sort of usually could do the distance, but I'd die at 2,000 metres and crawl around the last 3. So yeah, for bits and pieces like that, it definitely helped. Definitely.
So when you get to the champs in '92 at Birmingham Wheels, the time trial, so you're the reigning champion, record, but Sutty Atkins wins it.
That was a shock. Yeah, that was a shock.
That was his first ever title.
Yeah, that was a shock.
Was you expecting to win it?
I was.
Really?
To be fair, I was, and I remember congratulating. I mean, I knew he was a good skater, and it was a shock.
Yeah, he went on to win another 53 titles. But yeah,
Like I say, by then I was talking. I remember because I think he congratulated me later on that weekend with something else I did. So
right. Yeah,
but yeah, I remember thinking, crap, you know. Christ, he is good, and I remember congratulating him.
Yeah.
And, I must admit, I did expect to, and I think I did a good time. But
in actual fact, I think the two races he won that weekend were the 2 that you had won the previous year, because I think he won the 1500 as well, so he took that one out. But you make amends because the following day, later in the day, I should say, it's the same day because over the weekend, later in the day, you're in the 10,000 metres.
I know.
Nobody saw that coming. I mean, you know, but
did you?
Really?
Yeah, it just played out that way. You know, literally. I mean, back in them days, you get the race sheet. I mean, I don't know how the racing now. And you just tick everything you done through all the races. I didn't target it. It was just, I'm going to Birmingham that day. Let's just race that race, you know, and that was it. So you know, it wasn't expected, but things just got better through the race. I don't know if it's a bit of luck. You know what I mean? For good legs.
I think Neil McGough placed in that. I think Neil McGough was second.
Fair enough. Like I say, I didn't expect to do anything in that race, and I never did after that. But yeah, I think everything, for whatever reason, just played out in my favour. I think it was slow starts. Like then I might have seen a gap, and I never got brought back. But it was literally, you know, dare I say it, maybe a fluke. You know, so
I don't know. Well, I don't know if it was a fluke because you just inches away from the 5k the title as well. You come second in the 5,000 metres that weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the 5k I was more up for the 10.
Really?
I must admit the 10 was just, I was there that day. I did a lot of races back in them days where you just tick every box because you were going and you're thinking, I I'm there. I'll just do the race for experience. The 10,000, I didn't think I'd finish, yet alone place in. But it just, for whatever reason, it just, I don't know. It just went my way.
I will tell you something. Actually, it was your victory in the 10K on the Saturday that prompted the Birmingham Wheels team to put together a strategy for the 5K on the Sunday. Because honestly, and this is a true story, right? Is that we'd had the time trial, we'd had the 1500 metres, and then there was the 10K on the Saturday, and I know it was because it was a shock. I mean, you said it was a shock to you, it was a shock to everyone, but like it was like bloody hell, Errol's on fire, and like if we can't take the sprint out of Errol, we're in trouble, right? And especially because Tony Marriott was still in the mix, and Sean McGough was in the mix, and so what we did was on the Sunday is there was myself, Simon Davis, and Chris Stafford, and we drew straws for who the race should be on for. This is a true story. We drew straws, and whoever got the straw would be like, you know, along the straw would say like, this is who the race is on for, and the other two have got to work for him. And the strategy was that we would go to the front with, I mean, it was a 5K, so it's at 25 laps. We would go to the front with something like 15 laps still to go. The three of us, and two of them would just work their nuts off at pace, so that nobody could pass. And that's exactly how the race played out. Is that Staffy took the race to start with, and he just wound it and wound it and wound it. He moved over and let Simon Davis Baldrick to just take it up and took it up again, leaving me for the lap, and then moved over on the last lap. And he moved over and caused carnage behind him because he just moved over and grabbed anything that was coming on the outside and left me with the last lap. And I know that you come through, and I know in the build up to that is that because of that in training as well in your fast finish, is that I purposely worked at just speed for the last lap, just all arm, throwing all arms and legs. And that's it. And it was because of your victory in the 10K that Birmingham will switch to a strategy on the Sunday. I remember it. So
that made me feel a bit better, because I can remember doing that race feeling fairly confident, coming off what I said to you earlier on, talking Morgan, thinking I'm pissed off because usually I could be my biggest self-critique, and I didn't think I did anything wrong in that race. I just thought the better skater won. You know what I mean? And I remember sort of beating myself because I felt quite good in that race.
It was a team. It was a team effort.
But I remember thinking, but still though, I mean, if it was a fast pace and you were still there, you still had to have the legs to do it. You know what I mean? We would have both been in the same position behind that train.
The wine just prevented anybody making the pass.
But no, like I say, it was a good race. I do remember that one because I was thinking, I could be on it, and I didn't do anything wrong. So I thought to myself, the better skater won that day. You know, and but no, it was a.
Well, we tried it again in the 20K, and we tried to mix and try to get it for Staffy, but Tony Marriott wanted to come through. Anyway, all that yesterday. But you was on fire that weekend, because other notable achievements as well that year were you won the Beadle Trophy, you won the Northern Midland Counties Championship, you know, and you medalled in the Parish Trustees, the Jessen Cup, and you also helped the club Northampton win the Chambers Trophy.
Oh yeah, the Chambers.
The Chambers Trophy. So you know, and I mean the Chambers Trophy. You know, when I think about that, and I think that was you, Chris, and maybe Andy Starkey.
Andy Starkey, that's right. Yeah.
So you know, I mean, to win the Chambers Trophy, that's a good team championship.
That was a trophy I always wanted to win. Well, there's two I wanted to win. One I never won was the Keith Lee boot. Always wanted to win.
Really?
Never won that, unfortunately. But the Chambers was the other one I always wanted, and we got that one.
But you still never got called up internationally. They were at 92. You was again overlooked, despite your performances.
I'd like to say I don't know whether it was just my age. I don't know. Maybe it was that. Maybe I just didn't know the right people.
Well, I will tell you that in 92, Chloe was the team manager.
Well, that's that then.
so that might explain a lot. To be fair
enough. So
Chloe was the team.
I probably deserve that then. Because I was rude to Chloe, and I have apologised. And if not, I'll apologise again, Chloe, if you're watching this. So if that's the case, that answers that. And fair enough.
Right, so it might do, but surprisingly, you didn't get called. But then by 1993, Tony Marriott now hung his skates up, and and everybody is playing second fiddle to Sooty Atkins.
Yeah.
You know, and you had the odd success, and but is that how you felt? Because like the old guard, Tony had moved on, and suddenly
to be fair, I did do a lot of speaking with Sooty. I had time for Sooty back then. I knew he put in the time and effort, so I didn't really begrudge him because I knew he was one of these guys who's very fanatical about the bearings, the wheels, this and the fit. And, he was super sort of laser focused, and the training he put in, and you're thinking, I couldn't put as much time into it as him. So to me, you're thinking if I ever did beat him when he was on that level, you're thinking, fair enough, this is guy. I wouldn't say. He's almost putting as much time as a professional. It was almost like he was taking it that seriously.
He was.
He was almost. It's almost his job. So, and you're thinking, someone who puts that much time in, unless you're actually matching them time for time and money for money, it's very difficult to beat someone like that. So I never begrudged Sooty anyway.
I mean, he was. If nothing else, he was an absolutely superb skater. And domestically, there was season after he just dominated.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, Tony had dominated the sport for a few years, in the late 80s, early 90s, but when it's almost like as he moved over, Atkins came through and just took up the mantle, and he just dominated that sport for so long, And also that year, we embraced as a nation inlines.
Yeah.
How did you find the transition?
Very difficult. I must admit, I had some. I did get some cheap ones to start off with, and I remember sort of thinking, I'll just literally put them in the cupboard, and I couldn't get on with them. I went back to quads, and then I remember just things getting faster and faster and faster. And I bought some off your dad actually, some pass boots and some.
The pass cripple.
Yeah, pass cripple. Yeah.
Still got lumps and bumps on my face.
Yeah, I remember buying those, and I can't remember, it might have been Libido frames, and I remember having to spend the whole winter just trying to get used to them. I remember Andy Starkey, he pissed me off because me and Andy on quads, we were night and day. I was much better than him, but he put on inlines and he was brilliant. Yeah. He was in training anyway. He just took to it quite easily, and I remember having to put a lot of hours in just to even compete. But I didn't find the transition that easy at all. But it did take a lot of work just to get in. It came, but it did take a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, you did get in April '93. You do get a medal behind Sooty in the 3,000 metres at Tent Park on inlines. Yeah. But in July '93, you get your first international call up. So, for the European Championships in France. So, how did it feel to get selected?
Yeah, even when I got selected then, even I sort of thought to myself, I'm past my best here.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. And I went over horrible thing to say, more of a tourist. I didn't expect to do much. When you sort of just know. I mean, I used to keep a log of all my times and my training times. I never as good as it was. I was definitely off the boil. I went over and did my best, but I don't think anything happened. I really don't. But I just thought it was a bit too late for me to be going. Hence why I was saying, it's better to be nice to people on your way up, because I do think, with my attitude, I should have been skating a lot earlier. But so even though it was nice to be called up and recognised, I did think it might be too little, too late.
Well, I know there'd been a change of the guard on the BFRS committee. I mean, you Doggett Senior was now the team manager.
Yeah.
And I think Rowan, Arlo, and
that's right. Yeah.
And Nick McGough. I think they had something to do.
Yeah, I think Rowan was. I remember being trained by Rowan.
I do.
I was in the used to do squad training sessions. I remember Rowan taking some of them. So
do you think the change of the guard helped in your
selection? Maybe, and I think I started to calm down a little bit by then. I started sort of thinking, my attitude started to get a bit better by that time anyway. But it was too little, too late. I really think my best days were behind me by then, and it was nice to be sort of called and recognised. Of course, at least I could say I got a call up. But unfortunately, I think just I can't remember who else was being called and who wasn't. But I just think my times weren't that great when I was called up, and I was surprised to be called up. But it was nice to be called up. Really
so do you remember the build up to the championships, to the actual Europeans? How did you feel like? Were you preparing, or was it like?
I was still. I remember it being. I was still predominantly a quad skater, and I remember having to spend a lot of time on inlines, and I remember trying out different ones. I think Mickey McGough gave me a few sets of his inlines to try, and I was trying different ones, and I couldn't get on with any at all. I remember struggling with inlines, and that sort of mentally knocked me back as well, because I know all the Europeans were flying on inline skates then, so I was on the back foot then. I was the back foot because my training times weren't as great as they once were, you know, a year or 2 years ago. So I didn't go over with much confidence anyway. So I probably sort of defeated myself before I even went. But even then, I remember sort of there were some fantastic skaters over in Europe.
Yes,
you know, they really were, and you know, whatever they were doing, what we were doing, there was a massive gap anyway. So you know, if any of us had come back the medal that year, it would have been a miracle. I really do think that. I think of that Honey Jikel. I think he was on fire.
Yeah, he was on fire.
Jikel was on fire that year, and there was a few others there, and. Yeah, you know, it's honour just to watch them, which is mad really because you were skating against them and I loved watching them, which was, you know, just showed that sort of frame of mind I was in really.
Right, I'm going to just pause you for a second because I'm just going to change this tape. Yeah, so we were just talking about the '93 Europeans.
Yeah.
It was on because we had track and road for it, and the track was that parabolic. And I remember, remember that we could use inlines, but everybody chose not to.
Yeah. I mean, I know I struggled on the parabolic. There was a certain way of skating it, and same again because I've just never been introduced to one before. I did struggle on a parabolic, and I can remember the road being super fast. You know, really quick. You know, same again, thinking this is just again night and day compared to what we're used to. Same again, it was a great event, but I remember it being really warm as well. Now it's something else. It was just super warm. And did we have to race in the evening?
We would have done. The thing was, again, the thing was with those European Championships, there was the seniors, the juniors, and the cadets were all at their championships at the same time. So it was a massively packed program, which is why we sent a big team as well. Yeah, because we had juniors and juniors and cadets. So we had people like you, Kevin Woods, Doggett, Ollie Spears as the kids, you know.
That's right,
you know, and then there was myself, you, Macca, Sutty, Alison even, you know, so it was a really big, team. But I remember that the 5,000 metres on the track, I remember being in that race for you, and you come 7th.
Is that when everybody fell over?
Yeah. Yes. And I just remember as we come round,
I was looking at everything.
Everybody was doing like the last lap or last 2 laps. Everybody was decking everybody else. We just weaved through the.
And I was saying, please let a few more people fall over. I might get a medal here.
It was like I just remember weaving through, and I just remember rolling around at the end. And you looked at me and went, "Well, that was eventful."
Yeah, I remember people going left, right, and thinking, just a few more, I might get a medal, just a few more. So that's the only way I was going to get near the front. It would have to be an act of God. Yeah.
But you like you said, I suppose, like your other results are not brilliant, and especially not in the sprints. But was you disappointed? I know you said you were perhaps your best disappointed.
I was, but I just thought, because I probably thought I didn't prepare properly enough. I knew it'd be fast, but I didn't realise it'd be that much faster.
Right.
And if I'd have gone back and done it again out of time machine, I think I would have trained literally 3 times as hard.
Right.
I would have probably taken days off work. I was trained in 1991 in the morning and the evening. You know, I just thought I was quick enough to do my normal training and maybe be somewhere near there. I didn't expect a medal, but I didn't realise the gulf was so big between what I was doing and what they were doing. So I'm not sure if that was a fitness thing or maybe I've never got used to the skates. I don't know. But I remember.
Do you think that like you underestimated how?
I underestimated it as well. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I knew it was going to be quick. Don't get me wrong. Of course, it was always going to be quick, but I didn't realise how much quicker it was going to be. So that shocked me. And I remember talking to Brian Wood, God bless him. I remember saying to him, we had an interesting conversation. I think we did. I did an international race maybe 6 months before then in France. I can't remember the venue, and I did all right. I did all right. Me and Chris went over, and we did okay. I think I might have medalled, I might have came third overall, and there was a few people there doing it. And I think that gave me false confidence. And Brian said, "Errol, this is the Euros. People up the game for the Euros. You know, you went to an international meet, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
And you thought, because I did all right there, I'd be all right at the Euros." And he said, people up their game for the Euros. And I remember thinking, it's true. I just totally overlooked that, and I didn't realise how much. There was people I was sort of skating with a few months beforehand in France, and then we went over to the Euros, and they were just 2 levels above me, and I was, but I would say it was the Euros, and people trained specifically for the Euros, and that sort of that missed me, and I was carrying on training as normal, thinking I had a few good results in France, I should be all right, should be there or thereabouts, but no, I was way off, and it just underestimated it.
How did you feel about it? When you got on the plane back home, did you think to yourself that I'm going to work doubly hard and put this right next year, or did you just go?
I think I was a bit deflated. I just thought to myself. I mean, you know, at that time, you know, I'm not sure if I could put more time into it. I really, you know, I just thought the infrastructure as well. I know we were trying as a nation to try and keep up with these people, but I was thinking a lot of it is down to individual, you know, performances. And I think, you know, I thought I'm going to have to up my game again here. I don't know if I've got the time to put that much time into it. You know, I think at the time as well, I think it was only me and Chris training. I thought maybe I need a bigger club to train with as well, and you know, I thought I need, you know, and then I thought maybe I should go over to Europe a bit more, skate there, but I never had the money to sort of, you know, race in Europe as much as I should have done. You know, I thought that's the only way you could do it. I did get deflated because I was thinking, you know, you could only do so much on the domestic scene, but if you want to compete internationally, you have to be skating with those sort of guys, probably week in, week out, to be fair. And I did sort of, it was more like a reality check, thinking, you know, if you can't skate with those sort of people, we never had those people in the UK, apart from the likes, there was a few, there was City and a few others, but I think you needed a good 10 or 12 people like that around all the time, skating week in, week out, racing against those sort of, that calibre of competition back then. And I think that's where I personally sort of lost out. I'm not saying for everybody else, but personally I could have done with. I always sort of thrived by having, you know, those sort of people around me, and that sort of elevated me. And I think not having that, me personally, I think that's where I just sort of got deflated, thinking, well, now what else can we do, you know?
Is that because like Northampton team, like it was a club, was just like yourself and
exactly.
Chris?
Yeah, and then you know, there was a time where you used to sort of go abroad and do some skating, but even when you came back, it only been me and Chris. I think even me and Chris probably needed, you know, other people, you know, to race against every week in, week out, to have that sort of, you know, I remember going, you know, English skating was quite clean back then, you know, going abroad there'd be elbows in your face and people tugging you back, and I just wasn't used to that, you know, and that's how it was done, and just, you know, so I just wasn't used to that style of racing. Could have done with more of that, maybe I could have got better, I don't know, but...
So a question, so did you enjoy your experience in a British shirt?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah, I did, yeah. I found it very difficult, but it was nice to actually sort of, to put one on, you know what I mean? It's nice to do a sport and actually wear your national uniform. So, yeah, of course I did. Yeah, because it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but yeah, of course I did. You know, I would have been lying to them. But yeah, it was nice. It was a proud moment. It really was.
Well, then later, so I seem to recall that we came back from the Euros, and then there was squad sessions for the Worlds in Colorado.
Yeah.
And I seem to recall at a squad session that it was all getting a bit heated between certain skaters, and I think Mick McGough was taking the training,
right?
And he said, "Who doesn't want to go to the Worlds, or who's not prepared?" And you put your hand up.
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't feel I was anywhere near good enough.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Why did you get to the squad sessions?
Because I like to skate. It's literally just for personal experience. Skate. You know, you've got to remember I was skating with Chris. Not many times I'd be able to get to a session on a track and skate with the likes of you, Ian Ashby, I think, was there, and a few other people there as well. I love skating with that sort of calibre, you know what I mean, people who are better than me. I love those sort of sessions. If I could go to a squad session and do a training session, I was going, because I loved doing it. But I didn't think I was good enough for the Worlds, and I wouldn't have enjoyed it, I wouldn't have. But, you know, so maybe I was being a bit selfish by going along to squads, maybe I was, but I just love skating with that calibre of skater. And that's the main reason why I was going, but there's no way I was going to go to Worlds. So maybe I was being selfish, you know. So.
Well, here's another. I mean, I'm talking, and I'm doing a lot of talking. Really, it's your story, like I said. But here's something that you might not realise. But it was when you said that you didn't want to go to the Worlds. It was actually the catalyst for a really big change in the federation.
Oh, really?
And I'll tell you why that is. The last squad session we had before a squad session before the Worlds that Mick was running.
Yeah.
I was actually skating that session.
Okay.
I was banned. I'd had a letter to say that I had been banned for, it was either 6 or 9. I think it was 9 months actually.
Oh, wow.
I got a 9 ban for an altercation that me and Sutty had at a previous squad session. Anyway, and they'd had a meeting, and I was banned. And I turned up to the squad session under appeal.
Right.
And I gave a letter of appeal, and because I'm appealing, the ban was upheld until my appeal was heard.
Okay.
And when we turned up at the squad session, I remember talking to you at the squad session, and you told me, I don't want to go to the Worlds.
Right.
and this was before. And so anyway, we were skating around, and then we got on the line, and Mick McGough told us to go on the line and do some drill or whatever. And I said, why? I said, I'm a bit nervous about on the line about doing this. I said, because there's people in this group.
Yeah.
There's people in this group
Yeah.
who don't want to go to the World Championships,
I remember that conversation.
and they could affect the outcome.
Yeah.
And he said, well, who doesn't want to go to the World Championships? And you put your hand up, and so did Sean McGough.
Okay.
And I can remember it clear as day. Mick went, in that case, go and roll round, and at that point, and he walked off and resigned.
Oh, wow.
And it was that that prompted it. And it was the conversation that you had with me before we stood on the line that prompted the response to. And as it was, the amount of people who that didn't want to go meant that those who did. The team was selected because you could take 4 people over it was, and only 4 people wanted to go.
Wow.
And the team selected itself that day.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. Well, I must have been, I would just go to any squad session. I'd just love to skate with that calibre, that class of skate. But I didn't. Looking back, I can see other people had valid points because
Well, I just remember saying, well, I don't want to skate with Errol because he don't want to go, and if he has me over in the squad session,
that makes perfect sense.
I'll be a bit up biff.
No, that makes perfect sense, especially if you put so much into it. I'll come along and I don't want to go, and that makes perfect sense.
But you don't race again until May '94, and you skate a BFRS Grand Prix time trial. You come home 8th.
Right, okay.
So, in actual fact, '94, you only make half a dozen appearances at most. What were you doing in '94 then?
'94, I think I'd moved away to Liverpool.
I was going to ask at what point did you go to Liverpool?
I think I went to Liverpool, and I was sort of still enjoying the skate, but not putting in a great deal of effort.
And the same in '95, you weren't really...
Yeah, I think in '95, I just started a skate shop business, and I was putting a lot of effort into that. And I think...
Is that in Liverpool?
Yeah, that was in Liverpool. So I started up a little skate shop there for inlines and stuff like that, and I was putting in a bit of time to that. But I was sort of still trying to race because obviously it was a nice sort of thing to say, I sort of do speed skating and I run a shop, so it sort of draw people in.
How did you get to Liverpool?
Through a relationship. I met someone I was doing mountain biking, and I ended up moving in with her, and she lived in Liverpool. So
and that's how you get to Liverpool.
So I moved to Liverpool. So literally that relationship sort of lasted about 10 years or so. But that's how I ended up at that.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I knew you'd gone to Liverpool.
Yeah.
I remember you being in Liverpool. And in actual fact, so like '94, '95. 95 starts off pretty much the same. You come back in May again after just doing after the race in '94. You don't do particularly well in the time trial of the Grand Prix, for example, but you do come second in the Northern Midland Counties Championship behind Atkins. So you're not really racing much.
Yeah, I'm sort of more there for enjoyment as such, more than anything. Yeah.
And here's the thing. Right, so we've not really seen you for 2 years. Not really, you've been there, and in actual fact, you've been more conspicuous by your absence than not. And then on the 9th of July, '95, you win the 500 metres British Championship. Hey, go on in.
Because I was after sponsorship at the time,
right?
So I'd gone away and just trained really, really hard.
Right.
Because I was figuring, coming down from Liverpool to these races cost me an arm and a leg, and if I get some sort of sponsorship, and I had a few irons in the fire about who will get some sort of a bit of fun. When I say sponsorship, it wasn't. We're never going to make a living off it.
Yeah, but support.
Because I had the skate shop and all the rest of it, and I had a few people say, if you get a few sort of decent results, we might sort of help you out. So off I'll go away and start skating properly again. I used to work part time on a roller rink, Pleasure Island, and they were happy enough for me to sort of skate there after the session. So the session would close at 10. I'll be there between 10 and 12. Till midnight skating, doing drills and just self-training myself to see if I can get better and see if I can get a bit of sponsorship. So that's how I had a bit of a bump as such, sort of just up my level a bit. So just
And is that where you train? Just at the rink, really?
On the rink, I used to skate to work, which is quite interesting because I lived 14 miles away.
Wow.
I used to have a shop at the rink. I used to work at the rink part time. I had a shop there as well. I mean, it did sort of go into itself. We did move out the rink. That was 14 miles each way. It was never a fast skate, don't get me wrong, but it just used give me the confidence that I'm spending more time on my skates. You know what I mean? More of a psychological thing. So you know, days wasn't raining, I'd skate to work, skate back, and you know, weren't going to break any speed records, but it just gave me time on skates. You know what I mean? Just the movement of the skates and all the rest of it. And so yes, I put a lot of effort into it just to try and see if I could sort of attract some sort of sponsorship. So that's how that came about.
Well, I mean, was it a surprise you winning the title?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it was a surprise winning, definitely. I didn't think I was that good.
Well, you got a bronze in the 1500 as well.
Yeah, I must admit, I didn't think I was that good. I thought the sport had moved on. All I wanted to do was just show I could compete, you know what I mean?
And it'd have been on inlines as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, like I say, so I did the same again. I bumped up my training here, I put a lot of time into it. And but yeah, it was a surprise to actually sort of bump up again, because I just thought, the sport's moved on, they're all on inlines, blah blah blah. But I thought, I'll give it a crack. You know what I mean? I'll give it a crack. And so yeah, because I still enjoyed skate, but it was just costing me an absolute fortune coming down from Liverpool to take races. So yeah, a few people said, oh, if you can do decent, we'll give you a few quid to go. And so I thought, I'll start training. And
but just harping on about this 500 metres, because I'm like, do you remember the race?
The 500 I do.
Yeah.
Only because I came down with my then girlfriend at the time.
Right.
And I remember her saying, you better do well, because we're coming all the way down from Liverpool, we're staying in a shitty hotel in London, you better do well to make it worth it. And I thought, right, I better do something here. So she was pleasantly surprised after, and all went well. But I remember her coming down, she didn't really want to come down to see me skate, she didn't. And I remember her coming down, so we stayed in this shitty hotel. I said, right, I'm going to give it large. And and like I said, I know I had a good chance. I think in the heat, I surprised myself. And I remember my first heat, I think I beat Ben Summers.
Right.
And I thought, I'm thinking, shit, I know he's good. He's really good at the moment. And I was thinking, if I could beat him, I could be on it, and that gave me a massive boost. And so I beat him, and then that just gave me the boost on Eden. I just skated full whack for the rest of it, and I
was thinking about Ben Summers on the way here, funny enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Only because it just made me laugh, because I just remember my old man being a team manager, and they went away to a Europeans, and he didn't put in a particularly good performance. And my dad says to him, he said, "Well, I'm glad we brought our best sprints, not just any old wanker." Anyway. And funny enough, and on the drive over, I honestly thought about it, he was chuckling away in the car. But Ben Summers was a good sprint,
I didn't expect to be. And I remember beating him in the heat. I'm thinking, if I could take Ben Summers out in the heat, I'll keep these legs, I'll be all right. And I surprised myself. But it's only because I beat him.
Yeah.
I thought if I can get, because the aim was, I think it was the first one and the fastest loser. I was thinking if I could be anywhere near Ben.
Yeah.
I'll have a chance of getting into the final. That's what I thought, but I actually beat him. And I thought, okay, good.
Where was it?
I think it was Tatum Park. I remember Sooty standing on the line, shouting at Ben, because we had a couple of false starts. He was going, you go on the B of the bang, you blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking, I've rattled him here, because I think they had 2 or 3 false starts. And when it went, I just literally said, right, let's just give it large. And I didn't beat him by a lot, but I beat him, and I thought, could be on it, and then sort of had a very good day. So on a good day I was all right. Good time. I could surprise myself. So
Well, I mean, like in '96, then, so you seem to start afresh. Like you're going to more and more races. I mean, the results aren't really a patch on where they had been 2 or 3 years earlier. But you do more races. You suddenly found like new life in it. But you in the time trial in '96. You finished 5th, and you're more than a second behind your teammate, Ampadu, who wins
like I was saying, I mean, that's what I was saying about the 500. I knew the sport had moved on.
Was you conscious of it?
I was, even though I was still trying to play catch up. I thought if I can just sort of represent myself in a half decent light. But I was under no illusions that I was past my best.
Right.
But I knew the sport had moved on. But I still thought I could, have a good day every now and again. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. You know what I mean? So, and that's sort of the era I was trying to do that as such. So I was still enjoying it. I still absolutely loved to go and skate and chatting with everybody and catching up. But I knew I was off the boil. You know what I mean?
The days are behind.
So, but.
Well, the following year again, '97, you end up skating for Team Kryptonics.
Yeah.
With Staffy, how did that come about?
That was like I was saying beforehand, like I said about a few people saying they would sponsor me if, I could get a little bit better. And through the skate shop, I was selling quite a bit of Kryptonic stuff, and I think Tony Muse was skating for Kryptonics in the USA.
He did skate for Kryptonics.
And then, so the distributors in Kryptonics in England said, you know, if the USA have got a team, we'd like to have some sort of representation, and I was showing them some of my results from the last year or two, and they said, okay, we'll put you in the skin suit so you crack on. And yeah, Chris got picked as well, so I think we did, was it one season?
Yeah, one or two.
One season, 2 seasons.
2 seasons maybe, yeah. But so, did you draft Chris or?
You know, I can't remember. I can't remember if.
I couldn't remember you skating for Kryptonics, if I'm honest. But it was only because I looked back through some results.
I can't remember if they contact. I can't remember if it's distributors called Shiners of Bristol.
Shiner.
And like I say, I deal with them through the skate shop. And I can't remember if they looked, you know, asked around for any other skate, and they contacted him. So I remember having a conversation with Chris saying, you know, me and you were on the same team, and we were laughing, saying we were teammates. I remember having a conversation. Whether I put his name forward or not, I can't remember, but I remember they contacted me and had a conversation. Yeah, we both ended up skating for Kryptonics, but it's solely because Tony Muse was skating in the USA, and I think he was just trying to promote. He had a wheel called the Holy Roller.
Yes.
I think, something like that, and they wanted to promote them over in this country, so that's how that came about. It's the right place, right time, really. So, you know, because I just knew Shiners through the shop I was running. Yeah. So I put my hand up and got a free skin suit in the bag and a few other bits. So yeah.
We do a few races in '98 and take the odd medal skating for Kryptonics. But then on the 21st of June 1998, Tatum Park, you crossed the line third behind Leon Flack and your teammate, Chris Stafford, and in a 5k elimination.
Right.
Great result, but you step off the track and we never see you again for 7 years.
I've got no answer to that. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe the business just got a bit busy because I was doing quite a bit on the skate shop there, and maybe I just never had time to sort of commit to skating.
Do you remember stopping? Do you remember just?
No, I don't. It must have been a gradual thing because even when I wasn't racing, I always sort of skated a little bit, even on my own.
Yeah, you did a few races. Nice. You did a few, but like I said,
I can't remember. So I remember sort of being more and more involved in the business in Liverpool. Yeah. And I remember it was always a sort of a wrench to sort of try and come all the way down, and all the rest of it. And like I say, I mean. Yeah, that's all I can remember. I remember sort of getting fully involved in it, but I don't remember consciously thinking, right, that's it. Yeah,
you just never did it.
Yeah, I think time just got in the way, and you know what I mean, running the business and life in Liverpool, and you know, sort of then maybe my training sort of suffered a bit. So I probably thought, I'm not fit enough for this race. Maybe I'll do the next one, or maybe I'll train. I just never sort of, you know, I just fell off the treadmill a bit. I think that's as best as I can put it. It wasn't a conscious decision,
right? Okay.
You know, it was just a case of maybe I just never had time to train, you know. Right. And so if I didn't train well enough, I probably wouldn't have raced, and so it was a vicious cycle as such.
So we don't see you on the track again until 2005.
Wow,
7 years.
Yeah, I didn't realise it was that long.
Yeah, 7 years. Yeah. But what did you do in between?
To be honest, I did. Like I say, I was running the business. I was doing some cycling. I was keeping fit, but I must admit, I did put quite a bit of weight on. That prompted me to start skating again properly, sort of like 2004-ish. Yeah. And then, you know, maybe I sort of just found the bug again and just started skating again properly. So, but yeah, sort of 2004, 2005. I mean, I think daughter was born in 2007. Right. So yeah, I was starting to sort of in different aspects of my life there, but I was still skating, but more for fun.
Yeah, because I remember that. I remember when you came back in 2005. I say came back because you basically just did the Bet Men's the half marathon.
Right. Okay.
And you won on the old Eastway circuit.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Lee Valley. I don't know. Was you still be in Liverpool in 2005?
Yeah.
Because I sort of remember you coming back and I think
I got back to Northampton in 2008.
Right. Okay. So you're still in Liverpool.
Yeah. So I was still in Liverpool, and I think I was trying to get. I went through a phase where I literally just wasn't doing much at all. Then I think to get fit again, I tried running, was no good at that. Did a bit of cycling, I was okay at that, but skating I always loved. So I think I remember putting on my skates again and just getting more and more back into it. Yeah. And I think, you know, the internet was starting to become a bit of a thing then as well. When I was keeping up with people online and started to see all these new products, and I was thinking, well, you know, and that sort of drew me back in, just sort of, you know, just keeping keeping involved in. I thought to myself, I could still skate at half decent. I can remember being disappointed because my sprint had gone.
Well, I was going to say, you win the vet men's half marathon.
Yeah, that's it. The sprint had gone, but I still felt fit. So I thought, if I could just, and I used to train up and down the Liverpool, you got the Mersey, and there used to be this walkway, it's called Otter's Pool Promenade. And I used to do just skate up. I think it was 2 miles each way, skate back, skate. So that's how I trained for the marathon, just skating up, down, up, down. So that's more suited to then doing the half marathon, and that's how I started to get more into the distance training, just because of where I was, So, and, I just didn't feel quick enough to sprint anyway, to be fair. So.
Well, when you won that half marathon, what was it like to start?
That was a surprise, actually. Yeah, that was a surprise. I thought if I could place, I'd be doing all right. So I used to follow most of the other people online, so I knew roughly what was happening. And I thought if I get top 5, I'll be doing all right. So the same again. I think it was one of them days. You know what it's like. It just plays out in your favour for whatever reason. Yeah. You sit in the right position in the pack. Someone may be having an off day. And I think everything just fell away.
You would have been about 36 then, would you? No.
Oh yeah, I would have been 35, 36. Yeah.
Yeah, not,
I would have been about
36.
35, 36.
Yeah, you were in 2005, yeah.
So
that's 20 years ago.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm talking as if I'm thinking, it must have been old enough, but no, because it's 20 years ago.
Yeah, but even now I felt old back then. I knew, like I said, but sort of, I thought I could do okay in distances just because of where I was living and doing the training I was doing. I'm thinking, maybe I should just sort of switch to doing long distances. So that's why that came about instead of doing.
Funny enough, you were just 2 days shy of exactly 7 years since the last time you raced.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. You started the last race was the 21st of June, 1998, wow. And then it was 19th of June, 2005. Wow. So it was 2 days between the difference. But so it's good to stand on the top step again.
Yeah.
And you're skating for Southwood and Ferrers.
Yeah.
So you're in Liverpool.
Yeah.
You're from Northampton, and you got this club in Essex.
Yeah, I think.
Where's that come from?
I think what it was. I don't know how we came about. Me and Alan, Alan Moore.
Alan Moore, yeah.
For whatever reason, he used to phone the shop and we used to send him bits and pieces.
Oh, right, into Liverpool,
and, yeah, from Liverpool. Like I say, if he had some more bit to support his kids. And we just got talking and chatting, and he'd always, if I wanted to find out what's going on in skating, I'd always talk to him.
Right.
And so I just built up a friendship with him. So when I came back into it, he was obviously, because I was talking to him a lot, and Northampton Club wasn't going anyway. Yeah. Because I was talking to him, and I think I was with Debbie at the time, so I was skating with she was young then, stepdaughter, that was Amy. So and then Southwood had a massive kids contingent there.
That's
as
right.
well.
They skated for South.
Yeah, and I thought it'd be a good fit because I've got a couple of kids there. I'm trying to get back. I was speaking to them. They've got a load of kids, so I could take them with me. So that's basically how that evolved. It's just me sparking up a friendship with Alan and doing stuff for his club, and then it's just what it was, So
was you weren't with Debbie in?
I was with Debbie in
Liverpool.
Yeah.
Oh, you was.
Yeah.
Okay. So Amy and Tom.
And then we moved back from Hampton together as a unit as well.
Well, how did you train with the kids and that, or did you not do
it? So South, we used to do a lot of training. We used to try and get out to South Woodham once a month, but it never always worked out. But a lot of stuff I used to do with Amy, just from the stuff I picked up. Slide board I think was big back then, so did a lot of slide board and sort of finding car parks to skate around, stopwatches, that sort of thing. So yeah.
Well, was you focused on marathons at that point in time?
I thought I was better suited towards it because I thought my sprint had gone, and because of where I was living, there was a lot of sort of walkways and stuff to sort of train on, and when I was putting on my skates for fun, I was skating quite a few distance, even though it wasn't quick, so I had built up a bit of mileage in the legs. So I was thinking, well, maybe it's worth sort of trying to do the longer distances instead. So that's how that came about, to be fair.
Well, in 2007, you start to race proper again. You're in Cat 2.
Yeah, 2007 was when my daughter was born.
Right.
In 2007 I had a health checkup.
Right.
And in no final term, basically the doctor called me a fat bastard. He showed me this chart, showed me the weight I was, showing her height, and said, you've got to do something,
Right.
Because Lena was just born, and you have that thing where you think, well, I want my daughter to see me grow up. And so that's what sparked me to thinking, right, I better lose some weight. And I enjoyed the skating, so I just thought, I'll start skating again. And that's how that came about, literally just from that. It was the year Lena was born, so, and just because of that, doctors checked and said, you've got to do something. So, literally I'd taken my foot off the gas. I was hardly doing anything for like a year or two, sort of between 2000 end of 2005, I think I wasn't doing much. 2006 I sort of dabbled, but I put on a lot of weight. So 2007-ish, I was thinking, then literally I just went straight back into it, same again, training the odd hours of the day and all the rest of it.
Because didn't you start training then in Dustin way?
I was doing in Dustin. I was training.
And didn't Chris join you at some point? Didn't Chris?
Yeah, Chris used to do a bit. Anthony used to do a bit of training as well with me, sort of up and down Swan Valley. And then we did some in where the tip is Sixfield. There used to be a coffee Amazon taken, and there's a car park behind there. So we did some training behind there as well. So predominantly those two places we did some there, and Chris sort of got back into it with me as well at the same time.
That's right, because he went away with the team.
I think although we skated together, we had different aspirations. I thought to myself, I'm too old to even think about the team, so I never even entertained it. But Chris, he wanted to still go down that route. So even though we trained together, we sort of went different directions. You know what I mean? Whereas I was more of, skating. Doing
I think you were the wiser of the two in that respect.
Maybe, so I did a bit with South Woodham because they were a upcoming team. I thought, I could sort of always hide in South Woodham because no one would expect it to be, me sort of bringing home a load of trophies to South Woodham, concentrate on the kids, you know what I mean, and sort of, just get them up and running and just, help out where I can, really.
But you did all right because you were getting some wins and some medals.
Yeah, same again.
And you even won the Jessen Cup.
Yeah, I know, but none of that was ever planned though. Stuff just working out in my favour, I mean. When I was skating for South Woodham, a lot of stuff was, if it happens, it happens. I'd just do a set amount of training. A lot of it was sort of just trying to keep my weight under control and just keeping fit. As where I was getting older, sometimes you get the odd good day and sometimes you didn't. But it was literally, sometimes things went my way, and it's such a horrible thing to say. And a lot of people are going to shoot me for this, but I remember saying at the time, if you were a skater in the 70s, 80s and 90s, you were just a kick-ass skater. You were, and I'm sorry if anybody, you were. Even category 3s and 2s were a lot quicker than the category 1s in the 90s. In the 2s, they just were. I'm sorry, but I've said it. And, and I think I had a good upbringing, with the likes of yourself, your dad, and all the rest of it, sort of late 80s, early 90s. I think that's still been in good stead. When he went to sort of 10 years later, unfortunately, sorry people, there were a few people who were good, but the majority of skaters weren't that great. There were a few standouts, I had Leon Flack and a few others, but the majority of skaters, they weren't that great. They just weren't. I'm sorry, but they weren't.
And is that why you think that, because you stepped up to category 1 again in 2009?
That's it.
It took some more marathon championships as a vet.
Yeah, but I do think if I was that age, late 80s, early 90s, I wouldn't have been nowhere. I wouldn't have. But it's just the calibre of skater who was around at that time. There were a few decent ones. There were, but majority of them weren't really to what I grew up with. So
you think it's chalk and cheese, really?
I personally think so. I personally think, when I got into category 1, I had to train my arse off to get in category 1. Whereas when I was 35, 36, there's people walking into category 1 who wouldn't have held in category 3. And that's just my personal thing. But they couldn't help it. It was just the status as British skating at the time. It's just, you can only skate against who you can skate against. And if that's who was there, it's no one's fault. It's just, that's who was there. So, So I did walk back into category 1, which was a surprise, but didn't expect it. But
But you got medals in category. Did they? I mean, like you said, you can only skate against those who are there.
Yeah.
But because of the calibre of skating, did it take the shine off any of the victories, or was it like, well, it is what it is?
It's again a horrible thing to say. I always just took those days as a day out, you know what I mean? If I did well, fantastic. If I didn't, doesn't really matter, it's just a day out. If I come back with the medal, it's just, not always I come back with the medal. I just didn't take it as seriously as I did sort of 10, 15 years prior. But, it's just who was there, who I was skating against, and sometimes you'd have a good time, and sometimes, there were some good skates there, but on the whole level of skating wasn't as big. I mean, you know yourself, when I came into it, there was so many world-class and European-class skaters, compared to what there was sort of 10, 15 years later. Just to get to category 1, you had to be something special. You really did. I thought I was all right in category 2, but to get to category 1 the first time round, you had to be something special. And in my second act, it just, the calibre wasn't there, so I was just my race knowledge was a little bit better. Sometimes I was never the fittest bloke on there, but you could see how the race was going to play out, so you're in the right place at the right time, you took advantage of it. So
you didn't skate the marathon champs in 2012 and 13 at Preston and Stourport.
Mm.
Do you know why? You've done
No,
lots
to
of
be
them,
honest, I don't know why I wouldn't have. To be honest, I really don't. So, same again, maybe I wasn't taking the sport that seriously. Maybe I didn't want to travel. I don't know. I really
well,
don't know.
in 2014 you skate the marathon, but you elect to skate senior rather than veteran or masters.
Okay.
Can you remember why you did that?
I'll say again, probably going to get killed, but I just thought I'd have more competition in the seniors.
Right. Okay.
So
it would have meant more to you
to try and medal in the seniors than it would the vets. So I can't remember who was vets at that time, but I just remember thinking it'd be nice to sort of mix it up with the seniors, because I'd rather come last in the seniors instead of first in the veterans that year. I think that's just how I was, for that particular period. I just thought, I don't know, I just thought there'd be more competition in the seniors, and that's probably the best tactful way of saying it. So.
Well, you finished third.
Yeah, so too bad.
And that was the last of your senior individual championship medals. Okay, but it's 23 years since your first.
Oh really? I didn't know that much.
Yeah, between medals, yeah. So, but so you go. How was you viewing the skating at that time, just for fun?
It was for fun. It was a way of catching up with people and trying to keep fit at the same time. So fitness, as I was getting older, the fitness level was a big aspect of it, just a way of keeping fit. That's literally, that was the main thing. Then it was something I could do, something I enjoyed, and with a group of people I really enjoyed being with. So. Well,
2015, you're in the South Woodham relay team, and you get third in the relay.
Yeah, that was a shock as well. Same again, because we didn't even really train together that much.
Really?
No, that was same again. I think I was a space for it. I wasn't originally meant to be in it.
Right.
I can't remember which of the lads were, but for whatever reason they couldn't do it, and then Alan said, literally 8 weeks before, could you do it? And I think I did one training session with them, and that was it, and the rest was sort of training on my own, and that was a bit of a shock as well. But same again, I was just skating for fun back then, so.
Well, your last race is the Vet Marathon Championships again at the Olympic Park, and you're second to Nick McKenzie.
Oh, okay, right.
And then we never see you again on competitively anyway.
Yeah, so. I think that last race, to be honest, I remember that race, and Nick's a good skater. I remember just finding it difficult.
Well, you're 46 now.
Yeah, I know. I remember saying, because I remember falling over in training while I was training for that marathon. I remember laying there thinking, I don't get up as easy as I used to. What are you still doing? And I remember thinking, maybe this is my last year. And I remember doing that race, and I didn't find it easy at all. And so after that, I was umming and ahhing, but so obviously that must have been the last one. But I remember that year thinking, falling over in training quite a bit, and thinking, I'm just not getting up. I've been on the ground.
Yeah.
Like when you're young, you
bounce around.
And you bounce around. I remember just thinking, I'm not getting up as much now. I remember, just sidetracking it, I remember training once in the car park at Six Fields. It was an early morning session, training for this. I remember falling over, and I couldn't get up. And there was no one there to help me get up. And I was on the ground for about, it felt like eternity, but it must have been sort of 10 minutes.
Really?
And then the pain went in my leg, and I managed to move my leg, I managed to get up, and I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore, or not on my own at least. And I think that was the last time I sort of trained in that car park, because it was in the middle of nowhere, especially that time of morning, and there might be the odd man and his dog walk across once or twice a day, but that was it. So, and then you start thinking maybe I'm not as young as I was, and then the racing felt a bit harder, and I wasn't enjoying it as much. And so but I do remember Nick's a good skater. Same again. To lose to him really was no bad thing, because he was a good skater. So
national team member. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wasn't surprised that was the last one. It was a good race, but just a bit too hard.
Well, that was 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. Wow.
2015. It was 10 years ago. So, coming to 10 years in July.
Yeah.
So, have you ever considered getting your skates back on?
Yeah, all the time.
Don't we all? Yeah. And we all think that we're still 16 or 18.
Exactly.
And
all the time. And but I've not skated for, I don't think I've put a pair of skates on, it could be 4 or 5 years.
Really?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, I was doing a bit of fun skating before, but it's got to be 4 or 5 years. I swear. And it does keep crossing my mind, thinking, maybe I should go and do the marathon, just be at the back. And then the thought sort of gets washed out with, something else. And it just becomes, You know, I'll find out who's doing what online, and that's it. You know, and I think a lot of it is a lot of people I used to do it with are not there anymore. There's a lot of names online who will look, but I don't know really anybody. Whereas before I used to go skating, I used to have a laugh and a joke, I used to have a crack with all these people, but I don't know a handful of people now.
I get that. I absolutely get that.
So you know, so the sport's moved on, and it's nice to see it rolling on. It really is. But yeah, I keep saying, you know, and I will turn up at a race and have a look. But same again, I still haven't even gone to a race. I know I was going to go, then Birmingham Wheels track went there, which is a shame because that's the newest one, which is a shame. But you know, it's nice to still see they're still doing races in other places as well. And so
but
yeah,
like
so
you say, when you turn up and you're just a face in the crowd.
Exactly, I don't know anybody and the rest of it. So yeah, but I should go on because I still love the sport. I really do.
So what have you been doing since you stopped?
Since I stopped, I did do cycle racing for a bit. Sort of Tuesday nights, used to do veterans racing there. I did go into cycling quite big. Even on my stag do, we did the Mallorca. I think they called it the 312 kilometres around Mallorca.
Yeah.
Met Tony Marriott on that. He was there as well.
Yeah. Was he really?
Yeah, like I said, I think he completed it. I didn't. So yeah, so I did sort of do cycling for quite a while. Like I say, and I did do a lot of cycling. That reverts back to, like I said, when I was a kid, I used to do BMX. My first job was in a bike shop, and it's all come full circle because as you know, that's my business now.
Yeah, you've got the cycle shop.
Yeah, so it's like a cycle repair shop. So and so I sort of veered more towards the cycling. You know what I mean? And that's how I'll try and keep fit. Every now and again, I'll get the bike out. I'll do big rides, and I'll go for a stint. Then I won't. I did compete for a while, but it was only for a bit of fun. But that's pretty much, you know what I mean. But I still keep an eye on the skating. You know what I mean? I still see. You can still get a few half decent results abroad, which is good. You know, that's just basically just following things on.
Do you watch it online? Do you watch?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so same again. You know, you do see the odd occasion where you know one or two of the lads do quite well. So it's nice to see. You know, it's nice to see some of the British faces still managing to represent. You know, in Europe and you know and beyond. So it's nice.
So who was your biggest influence? Would you say in this skating career? Do you think? I mean, did you have anybody?
I had a lot, to be fair.
Did you?
I used to look up to a lot of people. I mean, you guys, both yourself and your dad, big influences. When I first came on the Harlows, I think they were very big influences on mine. Like I said, Brian Hartley, when he first got me involved, I used to look up to him a lot.
No longer with us.
No longer with us. There was a lot, but like I say, you know, literally the whole of category when I first started, you know, the whole of the senior team, you know, I could say British racing team, Richard Hartley, but you know, I remember standing there in awe watching just people skating so fast, thinking, you know, how quick are you? And, you know, but literally Ian Ashby and Andrew Newton, Mark Tuck, you know, there's a lot there, you know, fast boys thinking, and the OGs, you know, without bringing the colour thing into it, and you know, because he was the first sort of black guy I sort of related to, thinking, God, you're quick.
He is quick,
you know, he was quick, and then you know, I mean, he used to have a laugh. Jake was another one, you know, and so yeah, there was a lot. So,
and if you could go back and change anything, what would you change?
My attitude.
Really? Is that what you think?
I think that's the only thing. My attitude. It did stink, you know, when I was young, and I think I lost quite a few sort of opportunities because of my attitude. I think that's the only thing. Apart from that, everything was. As it is what it is, you know, it sort of shaped me. It did shape me as a person, and you know, it sort of kept me out of a lot of trouble. You know, when I was younger, I came from a council estate, so you know, I could have gone one way or the other. Yeah. So you know, having a sport to focus on.
But you had to have a bit of an edge.
Yeah.
To big boy, you know.
Yeah, you know, and so maybe some of that council estate attitude sort of held me back. But on the flip side, you know, it kept me out of a lot of trouble because I was skating. You know, so that's probably the only thing I would have changed. I did have a bit of a stinky attitude when I was younger.
And if you could pick a standout moment in your speed skating career, what would it be?
Probably the 10,000 metres. Because I just wasn't meant
the championship.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I mean...
92.
Yeah, the weekend I won the 300 and the 1500 was brilliant.
Yeah.
But that 10,000 metres, I remember going home and crying, you know, thinking,
really?
How did that happen? And I remember taking the cup into the engraver and getting my name engraved.
Yeah.
How did I end up on this cup?
The English Sports Cup.
Yeah, because I just wasn't a 10,000 metre skater. So that's probably one of the standout moments. But, you know, same again, close second, doing 2 championships in one weekend as well. There's a lot of others, but yeah, the 10,000.
The 10Ks is
I think it has to be, because I was just, you know, just totally shocked. So a lot of good, but there's been so many good moments. So,
well, Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, Errol Spence, multiple British champion, British record holder, British skating legend, and an all-round nice guy.
Thanks very much,
so
John.
thanks a lot for doing
No,
that,
I
mate.
appreciate it, John.
Really
Thank you
enjoyed
very
it.
much. No, thank you. Really nice. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
So, yeah,